Hey everyone, Rational Muscle here, and sorry for the extended delay in putting up another YouTube video. Life, career, science, research, books, those kind of things, they all get in the way. I would love to do YouTube full time, I think, but it just wouldn't quite pay the same bills. So anyway, I just had to make a video about this because I just read this this morning, and I actually know one of the guys that's in the study. So anyway, I would like to pose this question to theists and maybe preempt some of your answers with some answers that you may give. And let me know if the answers are right or wrong. They may be wrong. But this is very interesting stuff. This is a very conclusive study, and it's going to be duplicated multiple times over. I know this because this is part of what I do. But this is a study on the brain chemistry and how brains handle temptation specifically. Now, this is very interesting because different people handle temptation in different ways. And this is what this study suggests. If you want to read this study, just search for this right here. Brain scans show why some can't resist temptation. That's what you're going to want to look for. Just Google it, and you'll pull up you'll pull up all the studies here. It's in this Journal of Neuroscience is the study journal that it was published in, and at least one of them. And in this study, they looked at the brain striatum and looked at how this may, how a certain part of the brain, specifically the nucleus accumbens, that's a part of your brain that is responsible for pleasure. So it's involved in a lot of other things as well, but it's primarily the ability to say no. And I'm scrolling through the study here just to give you guys an idea of what this is all about. There's 48 women that did this study, and they were all, I think they were all freshmen at college. In case I remember, that's correct. They were all freshmen at college. And this is what's interesting. They looked specifically at multiple things that usually freshman women would be tempted by. And one of them was sexual activity. And appetites of any kind. Food was one and sexual was the other. Now, I'm going to paraphrase this study. You feel free to read it. What was found was pretty revealing, that there are brain chemistries that simply cannot or are not wired to resist temptation when it comes to certain things. One of them's food. The other one's sex, sexual activity of any kind. Now, I find this very, very interesting because, biblically speaking, both gluttony and, of course, almost anything sexual outside of marriage is considered something that you do. It's not something that you are. And here is the crux of the argument, because the researchers determined that this is just the way certain people are mentally wired. And they're going to take the study, by the way, all the way back to infants, so that we can't say, oh, the repetitive nature of the activities led the wiring to this to be this way. That's a very legitimate response to this, but I don't think that's what they're going to find, especially after my experience in this particular field. Now, this being said, if sexual appetites are hardwired into our brain, and not homosexual, not heterosexual, it could be either. Okay, you can take your pick, it doesn't matter, but let's say heterosexual. I'm heterosexual, so let's say that's hardwired into my brain, and my particular part of my brain region that we're looking at cannot control these urges, is not wired to control these urges well. One of the researchers, Demos, said that the idea that all people are equally capable of self-control is naive. Now, if this is genetic, as we suspect, this should rule out any sort of responsibility for this sin. And before you throw out, here's the arguments I think that theists are going to throw out. Well, that's the result of the fall. That's the result of the whole Garden of Eden thing, of the temptation in the garden, the fall of man, and this is what we have. Well, then you'll have to explain why God is a respecter of persons, because God is also supposedly not a respecter of persons. This is not like across the board. Everybody's got cravings of certain kinds, but some people have cravings to play video games or whatever. Specifically sexual and specifically appetite, two sins in the Bible, are hardwired in people, according to this study, are hardwired. And virtually impossible, not impossible perhaps, but virtually impossible to control. Why is such a burden placed on these people as opposed to other quote-unquote normal people? I don't believe that this is abnormal. I believe this is normal. But why do you consider that fair? Why is that a fair system of judgment? to judge someone, especially when it comes to sex, because under Levitical law, under the Mosaic law, and frankly, under a lot of the ways that the Republicans are wanting to go in the United States right now, they want to outlaw this stuff, okay? And in Levitical and Mosaic law, you were stoned. You were killed for this stuff. You were killed for adultery. You were, especially women, it was much more so the women than the men. You were stoned for these acts. So one act you would get stoned. Another act, let's say that I just had a compulsion to build fire. Unless I built fire on the Sabbath, nothing would happen to me. Why are some sins, in the case of sexuality especially, judged by death, judged by eternal condemnation, as opposed to other sins? Now, I know, before you say something else, theist, I know what you're saying. All sin is basically the same. Basically the fact we were born sinners makes us no different than so, and so. Well, what you'll have to explain is under the old law, which I know you're going to say was nailed to the cross, etc., etc. But this was God's standard under the old law. So at one point in time, your deity believed this one act, someone could not control their sexual appetite, was punishable by death of the most cruel nature. Why was this the case at any time? It doesn't matter that, quote unquote, it's nailed to the cross right now, because let's face it, the majority of the people on the planet don't believe that. Okay, it may very well be true. I don't think it is, but let's say that it is. Why was it ever okay? Why was it ever moral? Was it moral simply because your God said it was moral? I'm not going to go into the Euthyro dilemma here, but you get the point. I can tell you straight out that the study of neuroscience is opening windows into how our brain works that will contradict your belief structures. And you will have to make a decision at some point to say, this was all the result of the fall of mankind. In other words, God is going to punish mankind for the act of two people that lived thousands of years ago. This is no different than me having a child. That child does something wrong, does something very, very bad. I punish that child. And then my wife and I have another child later. And I begin punishing her from the day she was born. And she finally gets old enough to ask why. Daddy, why are you punishing me? I don't get this. Well, it's because of what your brother did. Now, multiply that times 1 billion, and you have your God. Why is this fair? Thanks for watching.